Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my video on Crystal Gambit. Crystal Gambit is a new lost streak trait in set 15, and it's pretty unique. The most similar thing would probably be Heartsteel back in set 10, but there are some pretty big differences, which I'll be talking about here. First of all, let's go ahead and take a look at what Crystal Gambit does in the description. Um, Basically, the first 4 rounds you have this in, you'll get a little bit more gem power by losing. But for the most part, it doesn't actually matter too much whether you win or lose because there's actually no streak bonus for Crystal Gambit until after 4 player combats. Generally, you'll choose to double down. You could choose to convert into rewards immediately, but if you do that, you'll typically be getting around like 4 gold, which just really isn't that worth it to be playing an econ trait on your board for 4 rounds to get 4 gold. It can be worth it, especially because some of the Crystal Gambit units have multiple traits. Janna, Swain, and Syndra in particular, each of these have 3 trait units. So if you're just fitting them on your board anyway for their other traits, it could just be, like a small bonus here where you're getting like an extra 1 gold per round. But for the most part, when you have Crystal Gambit, you're generally going to want to double down. And when you do double down, then you have to lose the next 4 rounds. If you win any of these rounds on accident, or if someone else is playing a weaker board than you on purpose, it's very, very, very important to scout and try your best to make sure you lose to other players. If someone else is playing Crystal Gambit, I would just sell all these units and then try to position um, maybe something like this. So they kill maybe something like this so they kill your Janna right away. Um yeah, you can try to trap as well. This is an option. But basically if there's another Crystal Gambit player, it's very important you try to lose to them. Because when you win, you lose half your gem power, and the gem power scales very exponentially basically. Losing half your gem power is not losing half your rewards. It's losing a lot more than half your rewards. Um, but yeah, in general, you'll be wanting to put this in during stage 2, doubling down somewhere during stage 3, and cashing out either at the end of stage 3, ideally, or very early into stage 4. You really don't want to be losing too much HP in stage 4, just because the base player damage is pretty high. You take eight base player damage, but not only that, a lot of people are going level 8, rolling down for very strong frontliners like a 2-star Leona with a stone plate, which means if you're playing a Crystal Gambit board, you might not kill a single unit there. So you're actually taking 16 HP for a loss. Let's say you have to lose 3 rounds in stage 4. That's actually 48 HP, half your total HP. It's a little bit too expensive. So let's look at some cash out tables. Uh, you just go to the TFT coaching Discord and reference tables. They're here. And let's go ahead and first look at what you get for kills and losses. So you can see in the first 4 player combats, before you double down, even if you lose every single one and kill a couple units, you're getting maybe like 100-ish at the absolute most, usually a little bit less. If you win every round, you're getting about 10, so about 40. So you're getting somewhere between like 40 to 100. Um, because the difference is actually not that big here, I actually think it's a lot better to win as much as possible in your first 4 rounds, because after you double down, you're going to sacrifice a lot of HP. So having that HP from winning early is actually a lot more beneficial than just having, again, it's between 40 or 100, so an extra 60 gem power. Don't get me wrong, 60 gem power is very, very good, but I think the HP is better. Once you double down, ideally, most of your losses will be in stage 3. You do get a little bit more in stage 4, but it's a lot costlier. Um, so ideally, you're mostly losing in stage 3. Let's say you're killing a couple units per round on average. If you're very elite at kind of fight judging, you could kill more than this. But usually, you're going to have to be weaker then the weakest of the three players, and then if you happen to fight the strongest player, you probably don't kill anything. So killing a couple units per round is pretty reasonable. So let's just say 60 times 4. You're getting about 240 here. Keep in mind, like, pretty much the minimum you can get here is 40. But normally you're not going to get like the bare minimum, right? You're normally going to get a little bit more. So that ends up being about 300. If you put this in, let's say you put this in on 2-2, you have 4 rounds in stage 2, and then you lose 3 rounds in stage 4, you'll get about 300. So let's go back and look at what like the 300 cash outs are. They're actually pretty game winning. Tactician's Crown, of course, very impactful. 3 full items, 3 item anvils. This is stronger than a prismatic. Honestly, I think these cash outs are pretty imbalanced. Like Tactician's Crown plus 15 gold, I think it's weaker than a prismatic augment if you're able to, because you're usually cashing in around 4-2. So I think if you're able to get this as an augment on 4-2, I think it's like a little bit weak. There is coronation in the game right now, which makes the crown into like an item, which is usually better than 15 gold. Whereas 3 anvils compared to stuff like blinding speed or even something like rod overflow, 3 anvils is usually better than that. This is the one that gives you 2 3-star 1 costs. I personally think this is the worst of the 3. I think if you're in lower ranks, probably like no flame, like diamond or below, this is probably really nice because it'll probably stabilize you immediately against some of the weaker boards. But I think when you're playing in like Grandmaster or higher, a lot of times you're probably just going to end up selling these 1 costs immediately. It does give you an artifact, so it's not nothing, but I would think it's kind of the weakest cash out here. If we look at the early cash outs, like I mentioned earlier, and this is why you almost always want to double down, keep in mind that I said in the first 4 rounds, you're usually getting between like 40 to 100. So that means you're usually getting somewhere between like 4 gold, even like 2 gold if you have exactly 40. So you're getting between like 2 gold to 8 gold, which is just really, really not that meaningful. Again, the Crystal Gambit units have multiple traits, so sometimes you can just fit them in. If you have Swain, they actually fit pretty well in a Star Guardian board. You could cash out into a Star Guardian board, but Syndra is a Star Guardian by herself. Janna pairs with Nico. Swain pairs with Rel and Ari. So you can run a board like this at level 6 and kind of just like try to win and just like tempo, win rounds, and get an extra like 1 gold per round. That's completely fine. But generally, if you're playing Crystal Gambit in order to get the econ, you always want to go for the double down. If you're able to get some of these higher ones, there's another thing you can do, which is a double down. So this would basically be 8 losses in a row. You would probably have to start losing on stage 3 and then lose some on stage 4. Keep in mind on stage 4, if you don't kill anything, your losses are 16 HP. And you have to imagine that you have to be pretty careful not to win. So no matter how good you are at fight judging, I think it's pretty realistic. It's pretty unrealistic to assume you're going to take, like 2 or 3 unit losses. So I think you should be assuming you're losing like 13 HP for every single round. Stage 4 fight, so 13 times 4, that's 62. And then on stage 3, when you're losing, you should be assuming you're losing like 10. So keep in mind this already adds up to 162 plus 40. So if you do go for this play, I think it's very important to kind of what's the word, like walk on the edge. You have to be pretty aggressive with your fight judging and killing a lot of units. I also think you can only go for this if you win your first 4 rounds with Crystal Gambit. It doesn't have to be all 4, but you have to start with like at least 90 HP. Otherwise, it's just really hard to do. But if you're able to pull that off, you could get maybe a 600 cash out, which should frequently win you the game. Not always. It's not just like you cash out 600 and you immediately win. That's a very important distinction. It will give you a good chance, but yeah, a lot of times you might just if you're in that situation, you might just prefer to go for the single double down and get the 300 cash. That is an option though, so I figured I would mention it. Um, it's pretty hard to get these bigger cash outs. They're, I don't know, they're just really difficult to get. Part of the reason Crystal Gambit is different than other cash out traits we've had in the past is, for example, Cypher in the previous set. If you put in 4 or 5 Cypher compared to 3 Cypher, you would just get a bigger cash out. However, Crystal Gambit doesn't really work like that. The 5 breakpoint is a separate loot table, which is actually not super valuable in terms of going for a big cash out. But if you're kind of like just winning, or if you're just planning on losing anyway, and you might as well like get it. It's like a little bit of bonus you can have. It's nothing too crazy. It's just like a nice to have thing if you can afford it. Generally, I wouldn't be playing 5 Crystal Gambit that often. Again, I guess if you're lose streaking anyways, there's no reason not to. You're not playing your strongest board. I guess in order to get some of these bigger cash outs, the 7 breakpoint, you can get extra rewards, but this is just really hard to get. You either need 2 emblems or 1 emblem and a 5 cost. So this is, I mean, this is just really rare. But if you are able to get 7 Crystal Gambit, it's pretty strong. You can play it similarly to Golden Ox from the previous set, where you kind of just play it on your board. It gives you a lot of combat power, and you just try to win rounds. A lot of times you will transition into this after a single double down. So when you cash out, you'll get a huge spike of power. And then because you'll continue cashing out rewards from both the 7 piece and this 5 piece, because you'll continue cashing out rewards, you'll be able to like snowball the game. You'll be able to snowball in the game that way. So again, 7 is pretty hard to get. It's an emblem plus a 5 cost. But yeah, you can just play it kind of permanently on your board and maybe like tech it out at the very end of the game. What to cash out into? You can honestly cash out into anything. Something pretty simple here would just be to slowly transition into the Star Guardian board. So like, for example, on level 8, you could look for your 4 costs here. Maybe you already have RE items, then you can start itemizing Jinx, and then you can slowly like phase out some of these units. Janna will give Protector for Nico, Swain gives Sorcerer and Bastion, but you know, if you find Surfing, for example, maybe just drop the Janna. You can even just play Kaisa, or Xayah, sorry. Yeah, pretty easy transition to Star Guardian, but you can really cash out into anything. It's fine. One really important thing about Double Down, again, it's very, very important that you don't lose on accident. So I think even if you have Crystal Gambit on 2-1, I actually kind of like putting it in on 2-2 because either way, you're going to 8 loss. Because you don't have, there's nothing in between. You 8 loss or you 12 loss. Or you can go like 4 win into 4 loss. But either way, it's 8 rounds or 12 rounds. There's nothing in between. So I actually like to put it on 2-2. The reason is because most players, if they're 4 loss, right before Krugs, they might just play 0 units. And then when you fight them, you're going to lose your streak, you lose your double down. But if you put it on 2-2, you double down on Krugs. And most players are not going to open on 3-1 just because, first of all, they have to field a board in the first place to beat Krugs. Second of all, the reason people open on stage 2 is to get that extra street gold into neutrals. Street gold is doubled because you get street gold on neutrals. Also, they want to play less units in order to make interest breakpoints. For on 3-1, most people are already making 50. Player damage is higher. They've already had to field a board, and they're going to want to hold some units. So generally, it's pretty safe to double down for stage 3. Most people are not going to play 0 units and break your streak on purpose unless they're also playing Crystal Gambit. I know this was kind of a longer video than I normally do, but there was a lot to talk about. To recap, your first 4 rounds generally is better to win. Losing is fine. Once you double down, most of the time you'll go for 4 loss during stage 3. This will give you a pretty strong cash out that could potentially win you the game. Cashing out, you can cash out into anything. Star Guardian fits pretty well. 5 Crystal Gambit really doesn't really do that much compared to previous sets, like 5 Cypher versus 3 Cypher was a really big difference. Here's not that big of a difference. Um, and 7 Crystal Gambit, if you have the Spat and the Zyra or 2 Spats, you can play it kind of like 6 Gold Nox from previous sets where you just try to tempo. You basically have a cash out, you use that to start winning immediately and continue snowballing with more rewards. Um, I think that's everything. And as a reminder, these Crystal Gambit units all have 3 traits, so if you can fit them in together, I'm going to show the Star Guardian board again. If you can fit them in, you can kind of get this in for free in a sense, because you're using other traits of these units. So I don't know, maybe a board to look out for here. I'm not super sure what the best line for this would be, but this is something that kind of is intuitive to me. That's going to wrap it up for this video on Crystal Gambit. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the Discord, and thanks for watching.